Have you ever believed that one person, one simple act of kindness, could change an entire family's destiny? In a mansion in Lagos where money could buy everything except happiness, a billionaire's heart had turned to stone. His twins' laughter had been silenced by grief, and his wealth stood as a cold fortress around his pain. But then came a young woman from Surulere, with a heart full of patience and hands used to hard work. She was hired as a nanny, a simple employee. But what if her love was the only key that could unlock the joy trapped within those walls? What if the humble nanny, with nothing but compassion in her soul, held the secret to healing the billionaire's broken world? For anyone who believes that love can be found in the most unexpected places, this story is for you. Sometimes, the most powerful force in the world isn't wealth or power, it's the patience to heal a broken spirit and the courage to build a new family from the pieces. Welcome to Echoes from the Baobab Tree, where the timeless spirit of Africa comes alive through the power of storytelling, tales of love, betrayal, and redemption that echo through generations. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, kindly do so now, and don't forget to like, share, and join our growing family of story lovers. Now, let's continue the story. He was a rich CEO. She was a poor nanny. Their love story will shock you. And here is the moment that shocked everyone. Chikobi, one of the richest men in all of Lagos, stood frozen in the dusty alley of the Oyingbo market. His expensive Italian shoes were covered in mud. The air smelled of ripe plantains and burning fuel. He had just stepped out of a multi-million naira business meeting. His phone was still in his hand, buzzing with urgent calls from his office on Victoria Island. But he did not hear them. His entire world had narrowed to the scene in front of him. There, under a makeshift tarpaulin shelter, was Adeebi, the quiet, humble nanny he had hired to care for his motherless twins. The nanny he thought he knew. She was kneeling on the ground, her simple dress stained with dirt. In her hands was a cracked plastic bowl filled with hot pepper soup. She was gently, carefully, feeding an old, sick woman who was shivering on a ragged mat. The old woman's clothes were torn. Her face was lined with pain and hardship. Chike's heart pounded like a drum. He had been searching for his own mother for 3 months after she disappeared from their family village following a bad argument. He had hired private detectives. He had offered huge rewards. But he could not find her. And now, here she was. Here was Mama Nkechi, the powerful, elegant woman who raised him, now looking so thin and weak. And here was Adeebi, his nanny, the woman he had just fired in a fit of anger an hour ago, caring for her as if she were her own mother. His mind raced. How did Adeebi find her? Why was she helping her? How long had this been going on? Did Adeebi know this was his mother? His voice trembled as he finally spoke, the words a shocked whisper that cut through the market noise. Adeebi. Mama. Adeebi's head snapped up. Her eyes, usually so calm and gentle, were wide with panic and fear. She dropped the spoon into the bowl with a clatter. The old woman on the mat slowly turned her head. Her tired eyes met her son's, and they filled with a mix of shame and relief. Chike took a step forward, his body shaking. What is going on here? He demanded, his voice growing louder, filled with confusion and a dawning, terrifying understanding. Adeebi looked from the sick woman to the furious CEO. She opened her mouth to explain, but no words came out. How could she possibly explain this? The secret was out, and the truth was more shocking than anyone could ever imagine. What happened next would change all of their lives forever. But to understand how they got to this unbelievable moment, we have to go back. Back to the very beginning. The story really began 3 months earlier, on a hot and humid Monday morning in March. The sun was already blazing over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. In the bustling neighborhood of Surulere, the air was filled with the sound of honking danfo buses, hawkers selling bread, and children running to school. In a small, tidy room, 24-year-old Adeobi Nwachukwu finished folding her only two good dresses. She placed them carefully into a small, faded bag. Her heart was a mixture of excitement and fear. She had just gotten the job of a lifetime. A living nanny for a wealthy family on Victoria Island. "My daughter, remember what I told you," her mother said, standing in the doorway. Her face was kind but serious. "A gentle heart can calm a stormy spirit. Do your work with love." "I will, Mama," Adeobi promised, hugging her mother tightly. She knew this job was a blessing. The money would help pay for her younger brother's school fees and her mother's medicine. She could not fail. She stepped out into the lively Lagos morning and joined the crowded bus. As the bus moved from the busy streets of Surulere, the city began to change. Soon, they entered Victoria Island. Here, the roads were smooth and clean. Tall, glass buildings touched the sky. Expensive cars, quiet and sleek, glided past. It felt like a different country. Adeobi got off the bus and walked towards the address she was given. Her mouth fell open. The house was not just a house. It was a massive, grey mansion surrounded by a high fence with a giant black gate. A security guard in a crisp uniform stopped her. "Yes. Who are you here for?" he asked, looking at her simple clothes and old bag with suspicion. "Good morning, sir. I am Adeobi Nwachukwu. The new nanny," she said, trying to sound confident. The guard checked his list, then nodded. He pressed a button, and the giant gate slowly opened. Adeobi's heart beat fast as she walked up the long, winding driveway. The compound was so big it could fit her entire street inside. Beautiful flowers lined the path, and the air smelled sweet. A tall, severe-looking woman with a sharp face was waiting for her at the front door. She was dressed in a strict, grey uniform. "You must be the nanny," the woman said, her voice flat and without warmth. "I am Madam Chioma, the house manager. Follow me." Madam Chioma led Adeobi through a foyer so large it echoed. The floor was made of shining white marble. The walls were high, and on them hung beautiful family photographs. Adeobi's eyes were drawn to a large picture of a handsome, tall man in a fine suit, standing next to a woman with a beautiful, laughing smile. In her arms were two tiny babies. They looked like the perfect, happy family. But then, the picture stopped. The rest of the wall was bare, empty. It was as if happiness had left this house a long time ago. At the end of the large living room, a man stood by a huge window, looking out. He did not turn around. His posture was straight and stiff. "Mr. Obi," Madam Chioma said. "The new nanny is here." The man turned slowly. Adeobi recognized him immediately from the photograph. But the man in the photo had a smile. This man had a face made of stone. His eyes were dark, tired, and held no warmth. This was Chak Obi, the rich CEO. "You are Adeobi?" he asked, his voice deep and cool. "Yes, sir," she replied, bowing her head slightly. "You will care for my twin daughters, Nneka and Ngozi. They are 2 years old." He paused, and his jaw tightened. "Their mother is no longer with us. Since then, they have been difficult. We have had many nannies. None of them lasted. I expect you to be professional. Do not disturb me unless it is very important." Before Adeobi could even say, "I understand, sir," a sound came from upstairs. It was the sound of crying. Not just ordinary crying, but a loud, heartbreaking wail that quickly turned into two voices crying together. The sound was filled with so much sadness it made Adeobi's own heart ache. Chakobi's face became even harder. "They are awake. Madam Chioma will show you to the nursery. Do your job." With that, he turned back to the window, dismissing her. Madam Chioma led Adeobi up a wide, curved staircase. "The last nanny only stayed 1 week," she said, almost like a warning. The one before that, 3 days. Good luck. They stopped in front of a large, white door. The crying from behind it was so loud it sounded like a storm. Adeabi took a deep breath, said a small prayer, and pushed the door open. The nursery was the most beautiful room she had ever seen. It was filled with light and had every toy a child could dream of. But in the middle of the room, in 2 large wooden cribs, were 2 little girls. Their faces were red and wet with tears. Their tiny bodies shook with sobs. One of them, who Adeabi remembered was named Neka, was throwing her toys out of the crib in anger. The other, Ngozi, was clutching a small, pink blanket and crying as if her heart would break. Adeabi's gentle heart went out to them immediately. She forgot her fear and her nervousness. She walked slowly towards the cribs. "Hello, Neka." "Hello, Ngozi," she said, her voice soft and warm like a lullaby. "My name is Adeabi. I am here to take care of you." Neka responded by throwing a soft toy that hit Adeabi's arm. Ngozi cried even louder. But Adeabi did not get angry. She did not raise her voice. She remembered her mother's words. A gentle heart can calm a stormy spirit. She picked up the toy, smiled, and placed it gently back in the crib. "It's okay," she whispered. "You can be sad. I will stay here with you." For the next hour, Adeabi tried everything. She tried to rock them. She tried to give them milk. She sang a soft song her mother used to sing to her. The twins cried and cried. They were like 2 little hurricanes of grief. Adeabi was sweating, her arms were tired from carrying them, but she did not give up. Finally, as the afternoon sun began to set, something amazing happened. Exhausted from crying, Ngozi's loud sobs became quiet whimpers. Seeing her sister calm down, Neka's angry cries also began to fade. The storm was finally ending. Adeabi, sitting on the floor between the 2 cribs with the twins sleeping in each arm, let out a tired sigh. She had done it. She had survived her first day. She looked at their peaceful, sleeping faces and felt a surge of love and protection. These children were not difficult. They were just heartbroken. She whispered to them, "I will help you. I promise." But just as she started to feel hopeful, Madam Chioma came into the room. Her face was grim. "Mr. Obi wants to see you in his study," she said. Now. Adeabi's heart dropped. What did he want? Had she done something wrong already? With a nervous gulp, she carefully laid the sleeping girls in their cribs, smoothed down her wrinkled dress, and walked out of the nursery, her mind filled with worry. What she did not know was that Chike Obi had been watching her on the nursery camera. He had seen her patience. He had seen her kindness. And it had stirred something in him he had long forgotten. But as she walked towards his study, she had no idea that her first day was about to end with a shocking surprise that would turn her whole world upside down. Adeabi's heart hammered against her ribs as she followed Madam Chioma down the grand, echoing hallway. The marble floor felt cold beneath her feet. Each step towards Mr. Obi's study felt like a walk to her own execution. What had he seen on the camera? Had she been too familiar with the children? Did he think her methods were unprofessional? Her mind raced with fears, each one worse than the last. Madam Chioma stopped in front of a large, dark wooden door. She knocked once, sharply. "Enter," a deep voice called from inside. The house manager opened the door, gestured for Adeabi to go in, and then closed it behind her, leaving Adeabi alone with the CEO. Chike Obi's study was a vast, intimidating room. One entire wall was glass, showing a stunning view of the Lagos skyline beginning to twinkle with evening lights. The other walls were lined with shelves filled with books and awards. A giant, polished desk stood in the center, bare except for a single laptop and a tablet. He was not sitting. He stood before the glass wall, his back to her, his hands clasped behind him. The silence in the room was heavy and uncomfortable. Adeabi stood nervously, her hands clasped in front of her. She stared at his back, waiting for him to speak. The seconds felt like hours. Finally, he turned. His stone-like face was unreadable. His dark eyes studied her, moving from her simple hairstyle down to her slightly worn shoes. He picked up the tablet from his desk. On the screen, Adeabi could see a frozen image from the nursery camera. It was her, sitting on the floor, holding both sleeping girls. "I have been watching the feed," he said, his voice low and even. "You were with my daughters for 4 hours and 17 minutes. The last nanny lasted 45 minutes before she ran out of the room, crying." Adeabi's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know if this was a good sign or a bad one. "You are persistent," he continued, placing the tablet back down. "They cried for almost the entire time. And you did not shout. You did not leave. Why?" Adeabi found her voice, though it was a soft whisper. "They are not crying to be difficult, sir. They are crying because they are sad. Their hearts are broken. You cannot shout at a broken heart. You can only sit with it and wait." Jacoby's eyes flickered with something, surprise, maybe, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He walked around his desk and stood closer to her. He was so tall, so powerful. He seemed to fill the entire room. "I pay for competence, Adeabi, not for philosophy," he said, his tone hardening. "I run a billionaire company. I understand results. Can you get results? Can you make them normal?" "I cannot make them forget their mother, sir," Adeabi replied, finding a spark of courage. "But I can help them feel safe again. I can help them find their laughter. That will take time. And patience." He looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to solve a difficult puzzle. Then, he walked to a drawer in his desk and pulled out a thick envelope. He held it out to her. "This is an advance on your salary," he said. Adeabi's eyes widened. The envelope was bulging. It was more money than she had ever held in her life. "I am a businessman. I am investing in your patience. Do not make me regret this investment. You may go." Stunned, Adeabi took the envelope. It felt heavy in her hands, heavy with promise and with pressure. "Thank you, sir. I will not disappoint you." She bowed her head slightly and hurried out of the study, her legs feeling weak. Back in her small, plain room next to the nursery, she sat on her bed and stared at the money. It was a lifeline. She could send almost all of it home to her mother tomorrow. Her brother's school fees were secure for the term. A tear of relief rolled down her cheek. She had done it. She had survived her first day and even impressed the stern CEO. For the next 2 weeks, a fragile routine settled over the nursery. The twins, Nneka and Ngozi, did not suddenly become happy. Their grief was like the Lagos weather. Moments of calm would be broken without warning by sudden, violent storms of tears and tantrums. One afternoon, Nneka refused to eat her lunch, swatting the spoon out of Adeabi's hand and sending porridge flying across the wall. As Adeabi patiently cleaned the mess, Ngozi began to cry, triggered by her sister's anger. It took an hour of soft singing and gentle rocking to calm them both down. But there were small, beautiful breakthroughs, like little flowers growing through cracked concrete. One morning, Ngozi, who usually clung to her pink blanket, let Adeabi brush her hair without crying. Another day, Nneka, the more fiery twin, fell asleep with her head on Adeabi's lap, her tiny fingers clutching Adeabi's dress. Adeabi learned their unique languages. Nneka's cries were loud and angry when she was frustrated, but soft and whiny when she was tired. Ngozi would become quiet and withdrawn when she was sad, seeking corners to hide in. Adeabi learned to read these signs, to offer a toy before Nneka's frustration exploded, or a cuddle before Ngozi's sadness overwhelmed her. Jacoby was mostly absent, a ghost in his own mansion. But sometimes, Adeabi would feel a presence and look up to see him standing at the nursery door, watching silently. He never came in. He never offered to help. He just watched, his expression a mixture of hope and deep pain, before turning and walking away. One Thursday, the rain fell heavily on Lagos, drumming a loud rhythm on the mansion's roof. The twins were especially restless, trapped indoors. Their energy built and built until they were both screaming, running in circles around the nursery, overturning baskets of toys. Nothing Adeabi did could calm them. The noise was unbearable. Suddenly, the nursery door swung open. Chikobi stood there, his face a mask of fury. The noise had finally drawn him out of his study. "What is going on here?" he roared, his voice booming over the children's cries. "I pay you to control them. This is not control. This is chaos." Neka and Ngozi, startled by his loud voice, froze for a second, their cries turning into terrified whimpers. They ran and hid behind Adeabi's legs, picking out at their angry father. Adeabi's heart was pounding, but she stood her ground, shielding the girls with her body. "Sir, please, they are just children with too much energy. They are not being bad." "I don't want excuses," he thundered, taking a step into the room. "I want quiet. I have important calls to make. This is a place of business, not a playground." In that moment, seeing the pure fear on the twins' faces, something in Adeabi snapped. She was not afraid of him anymore. She was angry. How could he not see their fear? How could he be so blind? She looked him directly in the eye, her own voice firm. "Mr. Obi, this is not your office. This is your children's home. And right now, you are not their CEO. You are their father. And you are frightening them." The room went completely silent. The only sound was the heavy rain outside. Chikobi stared at her, stunned into silence. No one, in all his years of being a powerful man, had ever spoken to him like that. Especially not an employee. Especially not a nanny. His jaw tightened. His eyes burned with anger. He looked from Adeabi's defiant face to his daughter's terrified ones. A complex war of emotions raged on his face: pride, shame, and a deep, painful regret. Without another word, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the nursery, slamming the door shut with a force that shook the walls. The slam echoed in the sudden quiet. Adeabi's bravery left her, and her knees felt weak. What had she just done? She had shouted at her boss, a billionaire. She was surely fired. She would be thrown out of this house tonight. Her family's lifeline was gone. She sank to the floor, pulling the trembling twins into her arms. "It's okay, my queens. It's okay," she whispered, though she was reassuring herself as much as them. She waited. She waited for Madam Chioma to come with her final pay. She waited for the security guard to escort her out. But an hour passed, and no one came. The mansion was silent, holding its breath. Later that night, as she put the finally sleeping girls to bed, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. With trembling fingers, she opened it. The message was short and simple. "You were right. I am sorry. Chikobi." Adeabi read the words again and again, unable to believe her eyes. The mighty Chikobi had apologized. To her. A poor nanny from Surulere. A small smile touched her lips. Maybe, just maybe, there was a heart behind that stone wall. Maybe there was hope for this family after all. But that hope was about to be tested in a way she could never have imagined. Because the very next day, a simple act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events so shocking, so unbelievable, that it would bring the mighty CEO to his knees. It all started when Adeabi, on her way to send money to her mother, saw a sick old woman shivering in the rain by the roadside. And she decided to stop and help. The old woman's grip on Adeabi's arm was surprisingly strong. Her eyes, clouded with sickness and fear, were wide with panic. "Please," the woman whispered, her voice rough and dry. "Do not tell him. Do not tell my son." Adeabi's mind was spinning like a top. Her son. This frail, sick woman, lying in a dirty shack, was the mother of Jacoby, the billionaire CEO. It was impossible. It was unbelievable. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The world seemed to tilt on its side. Just then, a shadow fell over them. Jacoby stood at the entrance of the shack, his tall frame blocking the sunlight. The expression on his face was one Adeabi had never seen before. It wasn't the cold anger of the boardroom. It was a raw, shattered horror. He was looking at his mother, seeing her in this place, and his whole world was breaking into pieces right there in the dusty alley. "Mama," he whispered, the word cracking in the middle. It was the sound of a little boy, lost and scared. The old woman, Mama Nkechi, flinched and tried to turn her face away, as if ashamed to be seen. "Chike, my son," she murmured. Chike's eyes then snapped to Adeabi, filled with a storm of confusion and betrayal. "What is going on here, Adeabi?" he demanded, his voice rising. "What have you done? Why is my mother here with you?" Adeabi felt the world close in on her. How could she possibly explain? The secret was out, and it was so much bigger and more complicated than he could ever imagine. But to understand this unbelievable moment, we must go back. Back to the day it all began, the day after the rainstorm and the shocking text message. The morning after Jacoby's apology, the air in the mansion felt different. Lighter. When Adeabi came down to the kitchen to get breakfast for the twins, the cook, a kind-eyed man named Jude, gave her a respectful nod. Madam Chioma did not frown at her, she simply handed her the children's schedule without a word. It was as if Adeabi had passed a secret test. The twins, Nneka and Ngozi, seemed to feel the change too. Their play was less frantic. Ngozi even giggled when Adeabi tickled her tummy during a diaper change. It was a small, musical sound that filled the nursery with hope. Later that day, Adeabi was given a few hours of free time. She decided to go to the bank in nearby Oberlin to send the money Chike had advanced her to her mother in the village. She dressed in her simple clothes, tucked the thick envelope safely into her small bag, and stepped out into the Lego sun. The city was its usual busy self. The roads were crowded with yellow buses and honking cars. Hawkers wove through the traffic, selling everything from plantain chips to phone chargers. As she walked from the bus stop, the sky, which had been clear, suddenly darkened. A typical Lagos downpour began without warning, a heavy, drenching rain that sent people running for cover. Adeabi ducked under the awning of a small shop, waiting for the rain to ease. That's when she saw her. An old woman, huddled in a doorway across the street, shivering violently. Her clothes were wet and torn. She was coughing, a deep, chesty sound that was painful to hear. People hurried past, ignoring her. Adeabi's heart ached. She remembered her mother's words, "When you see someone in need, and you have the means to help, you must not look away. It is why God gives us hands." Without a second thought, Adeabi ran across the street, the rain soaking her instantly. She knelt beside the old woman. "Mama, are you okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. The woman looked up, her eyes tired and fearful. "I am fine, my daughter. Do not worry for me," she said, but another coughing fit shook her frail body. "You are not fine," Adeabi said gently. "You are sick and you are cold. Come. I will take you somewhere dry." She helped the old woman to her feet and guided her to a nearby buka, a small local eatery. She bought her a hot bowl of pepper soup and a bottle of water. The woman ate slowly, gratefully. "What is your name, Mama?" Adeabi asked. "I am Nkechi," the woman said softly. She would not give a last name. She would not say where she was from. She was hiding, but from what, Adeabi did not know. Adeabi knew she couldn't just leave her. She used a little of the money from the envelope to rent a small, single room in a nearby compound for a week. It was not much, just 4 walls and a thin mattress, but it was dry and safe. She helped Mom and Kechi settle in and promised to return the next day with food and medicine. And she did. Every day, during her free time, Adeabi would visit Mom and Kechi. She would bring food, bitter leaf soup to help with the cough, and sometimes a sweet puff-puff as a treat. She would clean the small room and wash the old woman's few clothes. She listened to her talk about her son, a very successful boy, whom she missed terribly, though she never said his name. Adeabi assumed he was a man who had moved to another city and forgotten his mother, a sad but common story. She told Mom and Kechi about her own life, about her job as a nanny for a rich family, about the 2 sad little girls she was growing to love. They formed a quiet, secret bond. Adeabi never told anyone at the mansion. She was afraid Madam Chioma would think she was stealing food, or that Chaikobi would think she was neglecting his children. This was a secret act of kindness. Weeks passed. Mom and Kechi's health improved slowly. Meanwhile, back in the mansion, a miracle was happening. Chaikobi was changing. He started coming to the nursery not just to watch, but to participate. He would sit on the floor, looking awkward and out of place, and try to play with the twins. At first, Neka and Ngozi were wary of this new, quieter version of their father. But slowly, they began to accept him. One evening, Chak managed to feed Ngozi her entire dinner without her crying once. He looked up at Adeabi, and for the first time, she saw a real, genuine smile on his face. It transformed him. It made him look younger, happier. Her heart did a funny little flip in her chest. Another day, he brought a storybook and read to them, his deep, CEO voice stumbling over the words about talking animals. The twins were captivated, sitting on his lap, their little heads resting on his chest. Adeabi watched from the corner, her eyes filling with happy tears. The stone wall around his heart was finally crumbling. She found herself looking forward to these moments. She started to see the man he could be, the father he was meant to be. And she started to feel something more than just respect for her employer. It was a dangerous, thrilling feeling she tried very hard to ignore. But her 2 worlds, the wealthy mansion and the poor sick woman, were on a collision course. One afternoon, Mom and Kechi's cough returned, worse than before. She had a high fever. Adeabi knew the little room was not enough. She needed to get her to a proper clinic, but she had no more money. Her salary was days away. In a moment of desperation, she made a decision. She would take Mom and Kechi to the free clinic at the Oingbo market. It was far, but it was her only option. She used her last free afternoon to help the weak woman onto a bus, supporting her as they traveled across the city. She got her to the clinic, where a nurse gave her some medicine. But Mom and Kechi was too weak to travel back immediately. So Adeabi found a quiet spot under a tarpaulin shelter near the market, hoping the woman would regain some strength before the long journey back. She bought her some pepper soup, hoping the heat would help. It was there, in that exact moment, as she was kneeling to feed the sick woman, that Chaikobi found them. He had been driving back from a meeting, his route taking him through the market to avoid traffic. His driver had stopped for a moment. By a 1-in-a-million chance, Chak had glanced out the window. And he had seen her. His nanny. And the woman he had been searching for 3 long, painful months. His mind, reeling from the shock, finally connected the dots. The secret visit Adeabi thought no one knew about. The missing food from the kitchen that Madam Chioma had vaguely mentioned. It all made a terrible, shocking sense. He stared at Adeabi, his nanny, the woman who had just begun to melt the ice around his heart. And he came to the only conclusion his shocked and grieving mind could reach. He believed she had known all along. He believed she had found his missing mother and had been hiding her from him. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. His voice, when he finally spoke, was not a whisper anymore. It was a roar of pain and fury that echoed through the market. "Adeobi," he shouted, making everyone around them jump. "You knew. You knew she was my mother and you hid her from me. You were hiding my own mother from me." Adeobi's blood ran cold. The spoon dropped from her hand. This was worse than she could have ever imagined. He didn't see her kindness. He only saw a cruel, shocking betrayal. The truth was out, but it was twisted into a horrible lie. And now, the man she had started to care for, the man whose children she loved, was looking at her as if she were his greatest enemy. The word hiding echoed in the small, dusty space, seeming to suck all the air out. Adeobi felt the world slow down. The market noises, the honking, the shouting, the music from a nearby shop all faded into a dull buzz. All she could see was the shattered look on Chaik's face and the terrifying accusation in his eyes. "No. Sir, no. It is not like that." Adeobi finally found her voice, scrambling to her feet. Her hands were trembling. "I did not know. I swear to you, I did not know she was your mother." "Lies!" Chaik roared, taking a step forward. His expensive suit looked absurd in the rundown setting. "All this time. The secret trips. The food. You were here, with her, and you never thought to tell me. You never thought the billionaire you work for might be looking for his missing mother." His voice was thick with a pain so deep it was terrifying. On the mat, Mama Nkechi began to weep softly. "Chaik, my son, please, do not shout at her. She is an angel. He saved me. Saved you." Chaik turned his furious gaze to his mother, his voice breaking. "Mama, I have been looking for you for 3 months. I have hired men. I have offered rewards. I thought you were dead. And all this time, you were here, with her." He pointed a shaking finger at Adeobi. "Why? Why would you both keep this from me?" This was the moment. The truth, the whole, shocking truth, was about to come out. And it would change everything. "She did not know, Chaik," Mama Nkechi said, her voice frail but clear. "She did not know who I was. She only saw a sick old woman in the rain and showed me kindness. She is the only reason I am still alive." Chaik stared at his mother, his chest heaving. The logic was too simple, too pure for his mind, accustomed to deceit and complex business deals, to immediately accept. But, why hide? "Why did you leave, Mama? Why didn't you come to me?" Tears streamed down the old woman's face, carving paths through the dust on her cheeks. "Because I was ashamed, my son," she whispered. The word ashamed landed in the space between them like a heavy stone. "Ashamed." Chaik repeated, his anger beginning to be replaced by a confused hurt. "Ashamed of what? I have given you everything. A big house, cars, drivers. You gave me things, Chaik." Mama Nkechi interrupted, a sudden strength in her voice. "But you took away my purpose." After Neoma died, she said the name of Chaik's late wife, and he flinched as if struck. "You changed. You buried yourself in your work. You built walls around your heart. And you built them around me too. You put me in a golden cage in that village, with servants who reported my every move. I was not a mother anymore. I was a problem to be managed. A memory to be kept tidy." Adeobi listened, her hand over her mouth. She was seeing a history she never knew. "The day I left," Mama Nkechi continued, "we argued. Do you remember? I said you were becoming a ghost to your daughters, just as you had become a ghost to me. You shouted that you were protecting us. That I did not understand the weight of your word. I knew then that my son was gone, replaced by a CEO. So I left. I wanted to see if I could still be Nkechi, a woman, and not just Mama Chike, a trophy. I got on a bus to Lagos. But I fell sick. And I had no one. She looked at Adebi, her eyes overflowing with gratitude. Until her. Chike, the powerful billionaire, looked like a lost little boy. The truth of his mother's words was a medicine more bitter than any he had ever tasted. He had been so busy building an empire to protect his family from the war that he had failed to protect them from his own neglect. He had been so sure he was the victim of a cruel plot, but the real cruelty was the one he had inflicted with his own distance. His shoulders slumped. The fury drained from his face, leaving behind a landscape of raw grief and regret. He slowly knelt in the dirt, not caring about his expensive trousers. He reached for his mother's hand. "Mama. I am so sorry," he choked out, the words barely audible. "I failed you." It was a confession that cost him more than any business deal. Mama Nkechi placed her other hand on top of his, and for a long moment, mother and son were connected in a silent understanding, years of misunderstanding washing away in their shared tears. Then, Chike turned his head and looked at Adebi. The anger in his eyes was gone. In its place was a dawning, humbling awe. He had accused her, shouted at her, believed the worst of her. And yet, she had not shouted back. She had just stood there, taking his anger, until the truth could speak for itself. "Adebi," he said, her name a soft apology on his lips. I judged you without evidence. I accused you of a terrible thing. And you were only showing a kindness I had forgotten existed. Can you ever forgive me?" The storm had passed. The shocking truth was out, and it was not one of betrayal, but one of heartbreaking miscommunication on a kindness that had bridged a terrible gap. Relief washed over Adebi so powerfully her knees felt weak. "There is nothing to forgive, sir," she said softly. "You were a son looking for his mother." "I understand." Chike shook his head, a look of profound respect in his eyes. "No. You are a better person than I am." He stood up, his CEO demeanor returning, but now softened with a new purpose. "We are leaving this place. Now. Mama, you are coming home." He gently helped his mother to her feet, supporting her frail weight. He looked at Adebi. "You too. Please." He didn't command her. He asked her. And in that simple word, please, Adebi felt a shift that went deeper than employer and employee. They had been through a fire together, and they had both come out changed. The car ride back to the mansion was silent, but it was a peaceful silence. Mama Nkechi slept in the car, exhausted. Chike stared out the window, his mind clearly wrestling with everything he had learned. Adebi sat quietly, her heart full of a strange mix of exhaustion and hope. When they arrived, the mansion staff stared in shock as Chike, the billionaire, personally helped a dirty, old woman out of his luxury car and supported her as he walked her inside. Whispers flew through the hallways. Madam Chioma's eyes nearly popped out of her head. "Mr. Obi. Who is this?" "This is my mother," Chike announced, his voice firm and clear, carrying through the foyer. "She will be living with us from now on. She is to be treated with the utmost respect." He took her directly to the best guest room, calling for the family doctor to come immediately. The mansion, which had been a monument to grief, was suddenly filled with a new, healing energy. For the next few days, the house was a whirlwind. Mama Nkechi was cleaned, fed, and given proper medical care. She slowly grew stronger. The twins, Neka and Ngozi, were hesitant at first with this new grandmother, but her gentle nature and their father's new, softer presence soon won them over. The sound of a family, real, messy, loving, began to fill the halls. Chike was a changed man. He spent less time in his study and more time with his mother and his children. He listened when his mother spoke. He laughed with his daughters. And he always sought out Adebi's opinion on everything concerning the children. A deep, unspoken bond was forming between them, built on mutual respect and the shared experience of that day in the market. One evening, a week after Mom Nkechi's return, Chek found Adebi reading a story to the twins in the nursery. He watched from the doorway for a moment, a soft smile on his face. "Adebi," he said quietly. "Can I speak with you in the garden?" Her heart fluttered nervously. She followed him outside into the cool night air. The garden was lit with soft lights, making the flowers glow. "I owe you more than an apology," he began, his hands in his pockets. "You have given me back my family. You saved my mother's life. You healed my daughter's heart. And you have shown me how to live again." He turned to face her, his expression serious and sincere. "I do not know how to repay you." Adebi shook her head. "You do not have to repay me, sir. Seeing your family whole is my reward." "Please," he said, taking a small step closer. "Call me Chike." It was a simple request, but it held so much meaning. She looked up at him, into his eyes that were no longer cold, but warm and deep. The air between them seemed to crackle with a new, unspoken feeling. It was a moment of perfect, beautiful understanding. But just as he opened his mouth to say something more, something that might have changed their lives forever, a blood-curdling scream ripped through the peaceful night. It came from the twins' room. It was not a cry of a bad dream. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated terror. The moment shattered. Chike's eyes widened in alarm. Without a word, they both turned and sprinted back towards the house, their hearts pounding with a new, chilling fear. The horror was not over. A new, unexpected danger had found its way into the mansion, and it was threatening the very children who had just learned to laugh again. The scream tore through the peaceful night like a knife. It was Neko's voice, but it was a sound Adebi had never heard before, not a cry of frustration or a nightmare, but a sharp, piercing shriek of pure terror. Chike and Adebi exchanged one look of shared panic before they were moving, their feet flying across the marble floor. The gentle moment in the garden was forgotten, replaced by a cold, gripping fear. They took the stairs two at a time, their hearts thundering in their chests. Adebi's mind raced. What could it be? A snake? A scorpion? Her blood ran cold at the possibilities. They burst into the nursery. The scene that greeted them was one of chaos and confusion. The nightlight was on, casting a soft glow. Ngozi was standing in her crib, crying hysterically, pointing a trembling finger towards the window. Neka was backed into the corner of her crib, her little body shaking, her face white with fear, still screaming. But there was no animal. No obvious danger. Madame Chioma, her hair in a wrapper, ran in from her room down the hall. "What is it? What happened?" "I don't know," Chike said, his voice tight with alarm as he rushed to Neko's crib, gathering her into his arms. "Shoo, my love, Papa is here. You are safe." But Neko wouldn't stop screaming. She buried her face in his neck, her tiny fingers clutching his shirt so tightly her knuckles were white. Adebi went to Ngozi, picking her up and rocking her. "What did you see, my queen?" "Tell me," she could, but the child could only sob. It was then that Adebi noticed it. The large window that led to the small nursery balcony was slightly open. Not enough for a person to get through, but enough for a hand to slip the latch. And on the floor, just inside the window, was a small, crumpled piece of paper that hadn't been there before. Her breath caught. "Chike," she said, her voice low and urgent. He followed her gaze. Still holding the trembling Neka, he walked over and picked up the paper. He unfolded it. As he read the words scribbled there, the color drained from his face. His expression, which had been full of concern, turned into one of cold, hard fury. "What is it?" Adebi asked, her own fear growing. Without a word, he handed her the note. The handwriting was messy, as if written in a hurry, but the message was chillingly clear. You cannot hide from your past, brother. I have seen my nieces. They look just like their mother. So beautiful. So breakable. Give me what is mine, or I will take what is yours. It was not signed. It didn't need to be. Brother. The word hung in the air, toxic and heavy. Chike had a brother. Adeobi had never heard any mention of him. He was never in any pictures. Never spoken of. Chike's jaw was so tight it looked like it might crack. He looked from the note to the open window, then to his terrified daughters. A storm was brewing in his eyes, a hurricane of anger and a deep, old fear. Who is this? Adeobi whispered, clutching a still sobbing Ngozi closer. Chike's voice was a low, dangerous growl. Deli. He said the name like a curse. Madame Chioma, who was still in the doorway, gasped and quickly made the sign of the cross on her chest. Her face was filled with dread. She knew this name. But you don't have a brother, Adeobi said, confused. I did, Chike corrected, his voice hollow. Once. My twin brother. The revelation hit Adeobi like a physical blow. A twin. The story was getting more shocking by the second. Where is he? Why would he do this? She asked, her mind reeling. Chike gently passed Neko to Adeobi, who held both girls close, a protective shield around them. He walked to the window, slammed it shut, and locked it firmly, his movement stiff with rage. He is a ghost, Chike said, staring out into the dark night as if he could see his brother lurking in the shadows. A jealous, greedy ghost. When our father died, he left the family business to me to run. He said I had the better head for it. Deli did not take it well. He said I had stolen his birthright. He threatened me. He threatened Naomi. He said his late wife's name with a fresh wave of pain. He disappeared after her funeral. I thought. I hoped he was gone for good. I never told anyone. I was ashamed. The pieces were falling into a terrible picture. The mysterious brother, consumed by jealousy, now returning from the shadows to terrorize his own family. He had been outside the window. He had looked in at the sleeping children. The thoughts made Adeobi feel sick. We have to call the police, she insisted. No. Chike's response was sharp and immediate. He turned from the window, his eyes blazing. No police. Deli is clever. He will have vanished already. And involving the police will only make him more dangerous. This is a family matter. It ends with me. The fear in the room was now mixed with a new, chilling understanding. The danger was not some random thief. It was a personal, calculated attack from within their own bloodline. For the rest of the night, no one slept. Chike moved the twins' cribs into his own bedroom, and he and Adeobi took turns sitting up, watching them, listening for every sound. The mansion, which had just begun to feel like a home, now felt like a fortress under siege. The next morning, the atmosphere was tense. Chike hired 4 additional, heavily armed security guards to patrol the grounds. He had new, stronger locks installed on all the windows and doors. He was a man preparing for war. Mama Nkechi, when she was told, wept quietly. That boy, his heart has always been filled with darkness, she cried. He broke his father's heart. Now he wants to break mine. Adeobi watched Chike closely. The gentle, transformed man from the past week was gone, replaced by the hard, ruthless CEO. But now, the hardness was different. It wasn't to keep people out, it was to protect what was inside. She saw the fierce love in his eyes every time he looked at his daughters or his mother. And every time he looked at her, she saw a silent plea for her to be careful. Days turned into a week. There were no more notes. No signs of Deli. The guards reported nothing. The children, though initially jumpy, slowly began to relax under the constant presence of their father and Adeobi. Life began to find a new, cautious rhythm. One afternoon, Chike had to leave for a crucial, unavoidable meeting at his office on Victoria Island. He did not want to go, but the future of his company, and the security it provided for his family, depended on it. "I will be back in 2 hours," he promised Adeobi, his hand on her shoulder. It was a warm, firm touch that sent a shiver of both comfort and something more through her. "The guards are everywhere. Do not open the gates for anyone. Do not let the children out of your sight. I will protect them with my life," Adeobi promised, her voice steady. He nodded, his eyes saying he believed her. Then he was gone. The house felt emptier without him. Adeobi kept the twins in the living room, playing with their blocks within her line of sight. Mama Nkechi was resting in her room. The silence was heavy, broken only by the children's chatter. An hour after Chike left, the gate intercom buzzed. Adeobi's heart jumped. She walked over to the screen near the front door. It showed a delivery van outside the gate. A man in a uniform was holding a clipboard. "Yes," Adeobi said through the intercom. "Good afternoon, madam," the man said cheerfully. "I have a delivery of children's toys and books for a Mr. Obi. It requires a signature." Adeobi relaxed slightly. Chike must have ordered something for the girls to cheer them up. It made sense. She looked at the screen. The van looked legitimate. The driver looked harmless. But then she remembered Chike's words. "Do not open the gate for anyone." Her mind raced. It was just a delivery. In the middle of the day. With guards all around. It would be fine. She pressed the button to speak. "Please leave it with the security guard at the gate. He can sign for it." The man on the screen shook his head, smiling. "I am sorry, madam. Company policy. I must deliver it directly to the main house. It is very expensive. My boss will fire me if I leave it." He looked so earnest, so worried. Adeobi felt a pang of sympathy. She looked back at the twins, who were playing safely. The guards were right there. What could possibly happen? She made a decision. "Okay," she said. "I am opening the gate." She pressed the button. The large, black gates began to swing open. The delivery van started to drive through. Everything seemed normal. But then, the van did not slow down to stop in the driveway. It suddenly accelerated, its engine roaring, and sped straight towards the front of the mansion, screeching to a halt just feet from the door. Before Adeobi could even process what was happening, the back doors of the van flew open. And out jumped not one, but 3 large, menacing men. They were not delivery drivers. They were thugs, armed with heavy sticks. And leading them was a man who looked exactly like Chike, but with a cruel, twisted smile on his face. It was Deli. He looked directly at the security camera by the door, as if he knew Adeobi was watching, and his smile widened. The front door was locked, but it was made of glass. She saw him raise a crowbar. This was not a whispered threat in the night. This was an invasion. The nightmare was here, and it was breaking down the door. The world exploded into noise and terror. The sound of shattering glass filled the grand foyer as Deli and his men used the crowbar to smash through the ornate glass panel of the front door. Shards sprayed across the marble floor like deadly rain. Adeobi's scream was trapped in her throat. Time seemed to slow down. Her first instinct was not to freeze, but to act. She spun around, her heart pounding a frantic drum against her ribs. "Mama Nkechi," she yelled at the top of her lungs. "Lock your door. Do not come out." She didn't wait for a response. In one fluid, desperate motion, she scooped up both wailing twins, Neka and Ngozi, one in each arm. Their small bodies were rigid with fear. She turned and ran, not towards the back of the house where the guards might be, but towards the nearby library. It was a room with a solid, heavy door and no windows large enough to climb through. She could hear the shouts of the invading men and the pounding of boots on marble behind her. Just as she stumbled into the library, she heard the front door burst open with a final, sickening crunch. "Find them." Deli's voice, so similar to Chike's yet laced with a venomous cruelty, echoed through the house. Adeabi slammed the library door shut, her fingers fumbling with the old, sturdy bolt. It slid into place with a solid thud. She leaned against the door, gasping for breath, holding the sobbing children close. They were safe for now, but they were trapped. She could hear the chaos unfolding in the hall, shouts, the sound of struggling, and then the unmistakable crack of gunfire. The guards were fighting back. Her mind raced. What did Deli want? Revenge. Money. He would use the children to get to Chike. She looked around the dark library for a weapon, anything. Her eyes fell on a heavy, bronze bookend. She grabbed it, her hand trembling but her resolve firm. She would not let him take them. Suddenly, the handle of the library door jiggled violently. "Open up," a rough voice demanded, followed by a heavy shoulder slamming against the wood. The door held, but it wouldn't for long. Just then, a new sound cut through the chaos, the familiar, powerful roar of Chike's car engine, followed by the screech of tires on the driveway. He was back. He was early. The pounding on the library door stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of renewed fighting in the foyer. Chike's voice, raw with a father's fury, rose above everything. "Deli. Where are my children?" Adeabi pressed her ear to the door, her whole body shaking. She heard the sound of a brutal struggle, grunts, the thud of fists hitting flesh, and the crashing of furniture. "Your children, brother." Deli's mocking voice rang out. "They will be my children soon enough. You took everything from me. I will take everything from you." There was a terrible silence, followed by Chike's voice, lower now, but shaking with an emotion more powerful than anger, heartbreak. "I took nothing, Deli. Our father made his choice. I have spent every day since trying to honor it. But this? Terrorizing your own mother. Threatening your nieces. This is not the man our father raised. This is a monster. You made me this." Deli screamed. In that moment, Adeabi made a decision. She could not hide while Chike fought for his family alone. Carefully, she unbolted the door, just a crack, peering out. The scene in the foyer was one of devastation. 2 of Deli's men were on the ground, subdued by the guards. But Chike and Deli were locked in a vicious fight in the center of the room. They were evenly matched, 2 mirrors of each other, one filled with love, the other with hate. Chike saw Adeabi and the children in the doorway, his eyes widening in alarm. That moment of distraction was all Deli needed. He landed a heavy blow to Chike's jaw, sending him stumbling back. Deli snatched a piece of broken glass from the floor, holding it like a jagged knife. "It ends now, brother," Deli snarled, advancing. "No. Stop." The voice was weak but firm. Everyone froze. Mama Nkechi stood at the top of the staircase, her face pale but her eyes blazing with a mother's authority. She slowly descended, her gaze fixed on Deli. "You will put that down." Deli stared at her, a mix of shock and defiance on his face. "Mama, I said, put it down," she commanded, her voice cracking like a whip. She walked right up to him, into the space of danger, and placed her hand over his, the one holding the glass. "My son. My firstborn. Look at what you have become. This hatred is a sickness. It has eaten you alive." Tears began to stream down Deli's face. The cruel mask crumbled, revealing the wounded, jealous boy underneath. "He has everything," he choked out. "He has a prison of his own making," Mama Nkechi said softly, her own tears falling. "And you have the key to your own. Let it go, my child." Please. Come home. This is your home. The jagged piece of glass clattered to the floor. Deli's shoulders slumped, and he began to sob, great, heaving sobs of a lifetime of pain. He fell to his knees, and Mama Nkechi knelt with him, holding her broken son in her arms. Chike stood watching, his own face wet with tears. The fight was over. The war was won not with fist, but with a mother's love. The police were called and took Deli and his men away. Deli went quietly, his spirit finally broken. As he was led out, he looked at Chike. "I'm sorry," he whispered. It was not enough, but it was a start. In the days that followed, the mansion began to truly heal. The broken glass was replaced. The scars on the house were repaired. But the deeper scars on their hearts began to mend too. Chike, instead of pressing full charges, ensured his brother got the psychological help he desperately needed. It was an act of forgiveness no one expected, least of all Chike himself. One evening, under the same garden lights where they had been interrupted, Chike found Adeobi. The twins were sleeping peacefully, the nightmare finally a memory. He took both her hands in his. "Adeobi," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "When I hired you, I was a ghost. You brought me back to life. You saved my mother. You protected my children with a courage I have never seen. You have shown me what true strength is. It is not in money or power. It is in here." He placed her hand over his heart. He knelt down on one knee. Adeobi's breath hitched. "Adeobi Nwachukwu," he said, looking up at her with so much love it made her dizzy. "You are the heart of this family. Will you do me the greatest honor? Will you stay not as our nanny, but as my wife? Will you marry me?" Tears of joy streamed down Adeobi's face. This was not a shock of betrayal or terror, but a shock of pure, unbelievable happiness. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, Chike. I will marry you." He stood and kissed her then, a gentle, promising kiss that sealed their future. The rich CEO and the poor nanny. Their love story was one of patience, courage, and a love that could heal even the most broken of hearts. The mansion was no longer just a house of wealth, but a home filled with a love that was richer than anything money could buy. And they lived, not just happily, but gratefully ever after. The end.